Okay, so welcome to Deep Weird Dialogues with me, Dr. Jack Hunter, where I'm talking to contributors to Deep Weird about their chapters and the ideas contained within them. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Joshua Cutchin, who wrote a great chapter using ideas from cinema and editing to understand high strangeness. So Joshua, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your chapter and some of the ideas that you explore in it.
Well, first of all, I have to extend my appreciation for being invited to participate in this. It was a nice forum for me to express some ideas that I've had for a while, but I couldn't really find anywhere else in my work to sort of nestle them in. So I'd always been fascinated by this idea that Jacques Vallée had, talking about sort of the theatrical implications of especially the UFO phenomena, although I think you can draw it out to Fortean topics in general, where he said that one of his goals was to, quote unquote, pick the lock on the projectioner's booth. We're seeing something on a screen, we're being presented with something, but I want to see what's happening back there. And it occurred to me that if you extend that metaphor, you might be able to glean some additional insight from how these phenomena operate. And well, what I mean by that specifically is that anyone who has been formally trained as an artist in any capacity, there are certain lists of do's and don'ts, or things that you can do, but it's going to elicit a very specific reaction in the recipient, right? Having a musical background myself, there are certain compositional techniques that they say, well, don't use parallel fourths or parallel fifths because it sounds hollow, unless you want it to sound hollow, right? So there is this sort of underpinning to a lot of art that certain techniques will sort of elicit certain reactions. And if you take the visual medium of cinema and you juxtapose that against some of the, I guess, discontinuities would be the best thing to say, that you see in a lot of these high strangeness narratives, you do see a certain consistency. Now, I'm not saying that, there is some sort of meta-position intelligence with like a guide to filmmaking and it's going through. But my thought is that since these do generate specific reactions in viewers, there must be some sort of underpinning mechanism there that would generate that same reaction even in a non-cinematic space.
Yeah, very interesting. So it isn't a curious thing, because when we think about directors and people like that, well, obviously we're talking about an intelligence behind it that is picking and choosing specific techniques to make a particular impact on someone. So I know you kind of just skirted around it a little bit then, but do you think that there might be an intelligence behind it? Because otherwise it's hard to imagine how these techniques might be, sort of put into reality.
Well, I mean, you know that I feel this way, but I'll reiterate it for anyone who's watching. I can't say with certainty any of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, as it were. But I think that one possible, and to me quite attractive, model is that there is indeed some sort of intelligence that orchestrates every little thing. The example that I like to go to, although it isn't necessarily addressed in this essay, is that a lot of the things that we see in the pageantry of alien abductions are hideously outdated technology, quite primitive. These comically large syringes and different ways of collecting DNA that are just incredibly invasive. When I can go down to the pharmacy and get a cotton swab in my mouth, and congratulations, you've got my DNA. So if we're dealing with an advanced species from another planet, it seems like they are a little bit backwards in that regard. But if we are trying to understand this phenomena from the point of emotions that are generated or theatricality, I think that allows a little bit of a better place for some of these things to come in.
Yeah. And just one other thing that I wanted to bring out of this was you go into a little bit about surrealism in your chapter. And I talk about surrealism a little bit in the introduction as well. So I wonder if you could just elaborate a little bit on that before we finish.
No, absolutely. So I broke the essay down into a couple of different sections. One of them was talking about some of the camera work and editing techniques and even sound design that you see in modern cinema that, again, often elicit reactions of disorientation or alienation, these sort of things. And people who have experienced similar jump cuts, for lack of a better term, or dolly zooms in their vision in these experiences.
Yeah.
Also talk about sort of the content of a lot of these narratives that often seems nonsensical, which ties a little bit into the surrealism that you're alluding to. But um, it's it's a bit of a it's a bit difficult because people often equate surrealism with bizarre, but those two things aren't necessarily the same. Surrealism has a purpose behind it, and it's preoccupied with visually activating the unconscious mind through abstract imagery that oftentimes juxtaposes the mundane with the super mundane, I guess would be one way to put it. So, you know, there's is a certain level of surrealist imagery that you see that occurs in these experiences. And it's kind of funny. If you look through a list, there was a art scholar by the name of Jackie Craven who compiled a list of some of the things that she often saw in surrealist art. And some of the things that she compiled just sound like a list of things that appear in High Strangeness. Things like, you know, games and techniques to present random effects, you know, personal iconography, distorted figures, biomorphic shapes, uninhibited sexuality and taboo subjects. I mean, these things all appear time and time again. So it does appear that there might be a surrealist element in that sort of traditional classical literal definition of surrealism that's at play here.
That's really cool. And the other thing that obviously it brings up is that these experiences like surrealist art might be trying to activate our unconscious, or, you know, draw up stuff from us into the
100
experience.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, with that sort of theatrical flair, I mean, that's sort of what the goal of a lot of art is, right? So this idea dovetails quite nicely with that, as well as, you know, my friend Greg Bishop's idea that that UFOs might be nothing less than a cosmic art project meant specifically just to elicit a reaction in the witness.
Brilliant. That's perfect. Thank you very much, Joshua.
Thank you, Jack. I'm looking forward to having the whole thing in my hands.
You will soon. And
All
for
right.
those who want to check out Joshua's chapter, check out Deep Weird. Thank you very much.